Check 1, 2. We are still in the wake of Drake dropping Push-Ups, dropping Give Me 50, his response to Kendrick Lamar's diss verse from Future and Metro Boomin's Like That, from that first We Don't Trust You album. And there's obviously been a huge reaction from around the hip-hop community, even the non-hip-hop community, because of the magnitude of the superstars involved in this rap beef. And I have a few questions. There's a little bit to unpack here, because the moment I heard Kendrick Lamar's verse, Kendrick Lamar, one of the most revered, one of the most admired, and just esteemed MCs in all of rap, as soon as I heard that verse on Like That, I was thinking, if this really comes down to a style battle, I don't see how this goes well for Kendrick. Like, if Drake is involved and is coming at Kendrick, and then Kendrick has to then return fire and it becomes a battle of insults, I feel like that has always been much more Drake's lane than Kendrick's lane. Like, Drake has, live rap battle level bars when it comes to embarrassing an opponent. I mean, we saw it with Back to Back. We saw it with Duppy against Pusha T, even though the public generally agrees that Pusha T won that battle after the story of Adidon, and then Drake seemingly kind of tapping out after that diss track that Drake feels crossed the line because it basically revealed Drake's son to the public. But when you think about Kendrick Lamar and his rap style, he's always been a very nuanced, very encrypted, very poetic artist whose songs and albums often take a long time and effort to decode. Like, it's not surface level so much when you're dealing with Kendrick. And when he does tend to go surface level, it's not as cutting. The humor isn't there in the way that a lot of people who are more prone to these styles of battles possess. It's a different level of humor. And quite frankly, and I said this back when J. Cole had dropped 7 Minute Drill before he issued the apology, I have seen Drake as being the type to possess the level of pettiness required to really thrive in this type of a battle. Like, when I see these types of battles, I look at it like it's an attorney who's making his case to the audience, to the jury being the public in this case, and going down the list of reasons as to why your opponent is this or that. You're basically trying to get the audience to turn on the opponent and to laugh at the opponent, to look at the opponent's catalog and their abilities and look more skeptically after what you just said. I mean, it's not too dissimilar from when people are just, kind of capping on each other at the high school lunch tables. You've got to have that type of ability to sell. It's kind of a sell job when you're dissing an opponent. And I have never really seen that to be Kendrick Lamar's primary game. Again, he could do a whole bunch of things well. He's a ultra impressive rapper. Like, when he starts getting into his change of voices, when he starts rapping at a rapid fire speed and saying a bunch of things that have double or even triple meanings. I've seen videos decoding the numerology behind some of his verses. I mean, he's about as sophisticated an MC as we have. I feel like, in a sense, this type of battle actually requires less of that sophistication. And again, you more or less have to be the attorney or a comedian, basically. So when I heard Kendrick Lamar drop the Like That verse, I'm like, oh man, he's coming out saying I'm better than everybody again. And he's, talking about the other superstars in the game and talking about how he's better than them and how he wants war with everybody. He chooses violence. This wasn't too dissimilar from that Control verse from the Big Sean album, like just over a decade ago. And even then I was thinking, okay, you're naming a lot of guys, you're talking about how great you are, but when it comes down to it, can you get personal? Can you become more insulting when that is what's required? Because for all the times Kendrick has done this now, he lacks specificity when he starts targeting the individual opponents. Like, I mean, when he says a lot of goofies with a check, I saw that was a reference, for all my dogs, Goofy, the dog, the Disney dog Goofy. So even in those disses, there's a good amount to decode, as there is in Drake's Push-Ups, dropping Give Me 50. So again, when I heard that, I'm thinking, damn, if this comes down to a battle, does this go well for Kendrick? Then J. Cole dropped a 7-minute drill, which most believed was kind of like, not a great, diss verse. Some thought that it was basically responding to a warning shot with a warning shot. But then we get the leak of Drake's push-ups, which my first question is, what's up with these leaks? Because I've heard this Kendrick Lamar alleged leak since that, and it's like, is it a leak? Is it artificial intelligence? And we had to ask ourselves the same question when Drake's diss track dropped, because it seemed like it wasn't even ready to come out of the studio yet. Like, it wasn't mixed well. You could hear that he almost sounds like he's kind of reading through the verses, kind of speed reading through it. And if you listen to the first one that was released, and then you listen to the other one that sounds more fully produced, these aren't even the same songs. Like, a lot of the lyrics are switched up between the two. So again, first question, why are these being leaked and not released? Another question, there are multiple versions. In that fully produced push-ups, that Get Money sample is gone. The beat's a little bit different, and it's a little bit more customized, where they take like the drums out for a second to let Drake release a punchline, and it kind of further emphasizes the punchline, and it spotlights the punchline because the beat becomes a little bit more stripped down for those few seconds, and then the beat drops again after he delivers that punchline. So again, the production quality is different. Even his vocal delivery is different. And to be honest, all things considered, I like that original leaked version. I mean, look, there's this whole section that's cut out. Again, there's a lot that's missing from the original compared to the fully produced version. For instance, that alleged Diddy line, which he blocks out when he's talking about, I might take your latest girl and cuff her like I'm Ricky. Can't believe he's jumping in this, turning 50. Every song that made it on the chart he got from Drizzy. And then in the next line, instead of the original, which read, worry about whatever going on with you, and then he blocks out that last line that would have rhymed with Diddy, or I'm sorry, that last word that would have rhymed with Diddy. Instead of that whole line, he instead says, spend that little check you got and stay about my business. So again, that first one is a little bit more of a dagger, right? And then he takes out the whole last chunk after he's talking about these weak is teaming up. In the fully produced version without the Get Money, it cuts off right there. That's like the end of the song. But in the originally leaked version, the non-fully produced version, he says, but all of y'all falling like some dominoes. Bros turn to hoes like I ain't got enough of those. I can't wait to see how far you niggas get to reaching now. This the closest thing you niggas getting to a feature now. Sick line. Again, it's not on the fully produced one. Backpedal gang, cause a few of y'all been reaching out. Y'all drew the line, what the we got to speak about. Get your fucking head tapped, you niggas get the peeking out. You had a song for 4 years, drop that shit or shut your mouth. Like, why are you gonna leave that off the fully produced version? That last line, you had a song for 4 years, you've been sitting on the song for 4 years, drop it or shut your mouth. Like, why wouldn't you include that in the fully produced version? That was like one of the most relevant lines that was now withheld. So they're two different versions, and I'm just thinking, why is that? And again, if it's because the first one wasn't ever meant to even be heard with all those lines that I just read, then why was it leaked? Like, do you really have somebody in your crew that is releasing this material without your consent? And again, what is that subsequent Kendrick diss that many are saying is AI, and others are saying no, they're just saying that it's AI because the public that just heard it doesn't think that it's that good. I don't know what to believe in terms of that one. I think time will tell. But look, this push-ups track is dope. Like, from the jump, like when he's talking about Future, when he comes out saying, I could never be nobody #1 fan. Your first #1, I had to put it in your hand. Like, come on, like with that Way Too Sexy Drake song from Certified Lover Boy featuring Future, which in fairness to Future, he did hold it down on that chorus, right? That largely kind of made the song in a way. But in this song, Drake's going at Future. He's going at Metro Boomin with the iconic and quickly viral and iconic Metro shut your hoe ass up and make some drums. Like, that was a pretty cold line. And I mean, I've seen a lot of memes since that, but yeah, he's going at Rick Ross, and Rick Ross has since clapped back. Rick Ross actually released his diss track on Spotify, and he's been relentless on social media since. Rick Ross is really trying to get in the middle of this whole thing, when really I think most of the audience wants this to come down to Drake and Kendrick Lamar. That's the most exciting aspect about this whole thing. I kind of look at everybody else involved: Future, Metro, Cash, that's the XO manager who Drake says in that push-ups that, you know, spending Abel Cash overseas and he's tricking, wicked. And Rick Ross too. I look at all these other players as being peripheral players to the main story. I mean, even J. Cole, I know, you know, he's a part of essentially the big three. A lot of people are kind of criticizing him heavily after issuing the apology and deleting the song 7 Minute Drill from Spotify and from the platforms. So at least in the short term, you could say that his reputation is somewhat taking a hit. Even if he did make a principled stance, it just looks like since Drake came in so hot with this push-ups, it almost looks like J. Cole bailed and is nowhere in sight of this, you know, lyrical war, and Drake took the front line. That's what this looks like, right? But everybody not named Drake and Kendrick Lamar is kind of a side character in this now, right? Because Drake has responded. Now it's on Kendrick, and he is on the clock in a real way. And again, I had my doubts on this one from the jump, and I'm a big Kendrick Lamar fan. I'm a big Drake fan. I just thought that style-wise, styles make fights. Well, I think that this style favors Drake in terms of who can embarrass the other more. You know what I mean? But, you know, to Rick Ross's diss tracks credit, he does keep on repeating the phrase white boy, and it's not the best look. But if he's alleging that Drake got work done on his nose to make it less wide or whatever, and if Drake really did do that, that's substantial, at least in terms of using it in a battle. There are a couple things about the Drake versus Kendrick part of the battle that I feel are sort of low-hanging fruit, though. For instance, you know, you could always clown on Kendrick Lamar's height. That ain't gonna change, whether it's 5'5", 5 whatever. That's not gonna change, and it's always gonna be there. But it seems like an easy target. Same thing with when people call Drake out on either not being from the hood or being, you know, of mixed ethnicity. That will always be there. But I feel like both of those almost cancel each other out because they are such low-hanging fruit. Unless you want to make the Drake thing about him kind of acting like a mob figure when he is not of that ilk in terms of how he grew up and all that, you could use that. But if you're just going to go on race, just like with Kendrick, if you're just going to go on height, low-hanging fruit as far as I see it. But yeah, Rick Ross, he seems like really anxious to get some attention. Again, he's been relentless on Instagram with his posts. He, you know, Birdman took a side, just picked Drake. So Rick Ross was basically in the water on like a boat, basically pointing to what he says is Birdman's old crib while he's playing Bling Bling. He's just been relentless. But the push-ups track puts a lot of pressure on Kendrick Lamar because it is so damn good. And I knew that Drake, if he wanted to, could deliver in this fashion. It's right up his alley. And you just hear like the style of bar, just one after another, just after another punchline. And then he starts getting into a rhythm where like the rhythm and the cadence starts to carry, that starts making those stabbing lines stab even harder. Big difference between Mike then and Mike now. And then what's he say? What the F is this? A 20v1? 20 versus 1? What's a prince to a king? He a son? Come on. And that was like obviously referencing Kendrick Lamar referring to himself often as the prince and saying Prince outlived Mike Jack. So in reply to that, what's a prince to a king? He a son. So yeah, this was good. And I don't exactly know. I've heard rumors of what Drake was meaning when he was talking about the Whitney Bodyguard reference. For those, okay, Whitney was in the movie Bodyguard, sang all over the soundtrack. Some of her biggest songs were from the Bodyguard soundtrack. But Whitney Alford is also Kendrick Lamar's wife. And there are rumors in terms of what the Bodyguard's reference means in terms of Kendrick's Whitney, but I can't confirm nor deny that. So that part's almost not even worth speculating. Again, time will tell. But again, battles require a level of getting personal. Like no Vaseline, Ice Cube's iconic diss. You think about 50 Cent, even Jay-Z versus Nas, Cannabis LL, you go down the list, Kumo D to LL. There have been no shortage of battles over the, you know, the course, the timeline of hip hop. And Kendrick Lamar basically throwing another shot with vague references and basically saying, you know, F the big three, it's just big me, and slamming the others that way. It left himself open to this nasty counterpunch. And so, yeah, it's definitely now back on Kendrick, and the hip hop community is all looking that way like, well, what you gonna do? And I'm wondering the same thing, because it would require Kendrick to show us something that is almost out of his lyrical and substantial character to start getting petty and nasty and personal in trying to reciprocate in insulting Drake in the way that he was just targeted. I mean, Drake, the whole concept of the song is drop and give me 50. When Top says drop, you better drop and give me 50. Top being top dog, TDE, top. But when he's talking about 50, that's the 50-50 split between the artist and label when Kendrick Lamar drops. Now, Kendrick Lamar, I believe, has since left Top Dog. He fulfilled his contractual obligation with that last album. So I'm sure that's not the split anymore, but that's the split Drake's referring to. And it was almost kind of funny when he first mentioned the splits, because he said, pull your contract because we got to see the split. The way you doing splits, but your pants might rip. That was just kind of funny because you also get the visual of Kendrick hitting the splits, but the splits also being the financial, you know, just kind of having your way with the artist financially in demanding the split back every time you drop. So just the power dynamic that Drake is pulling there, basically saying in terms of the industry, you don't wield the same power that I've been wielding in terms of what you are getting per release. One of the best, and I think kind of slept on disses, was where he started mentioning, you better do that MF and show inside the biddy. Maroon 5 need a verse, you better make it witty. Then we need a verse for the Swifties. Top say drop, you better drop and give him 50. So he's talking about the decisions to feature on verses for artists, pop artists like Maroon 5, Taylor Swift. So he's kind of shooting at Kendrick Lamar having the reputation of taking these kind of principles, being very artistic and being very kind of guarded and selective in terms of the art that you're creating, which Kendrick Lamar only drops every few years, right? But then you kind of undermine that reputation when you're pointing out that he did a featured verse for Maroon 5, did a featured verse for Taylor Swift. I mean, full disclosure, he also did a featured verse for like Imagine Dragons back in the day. But yeah, so I thought that was actually a good one because that kind of cut at the core of Kendrick Lamar's musical reputation. So yeah, Kendrick's on the clock. I was impressed by this push-ups, drop and give me 50 verse, because it also makes it sound like Top's demanding you better release. You know, it's almost like the pimp hoe dynamic that he's kind of painting with having Top sound like the drill sergeant. Drop and give me 50 every time he says drop an album. No, you drop and give me 50. Drop an album, give me 50%, rather than drop to the ground and give me 50 push-ups. So it's just, you know, your quintessential Drake wittiness, cleverness. I just wonder what Kendrick, look, I know he's working on some like theatrical play or something like that, right? Kendrick Lamar better be cooking up the next Macbeth or West Side Story or Shakespearean script right now, because the pressure's on. Once again, we'll see what he comes through with. But yeah, this is very exciting for the rap world. I'm glad that, and I wanted to obviously stay peaceful, stay lyrical, stay on the tracks and not leak out into anything else. But in terms of just the hip hop lyrical warfare, I'm all for it. Always have been. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on this one. What did you think of the Like That verse? What did you think of 7 Minute Drill? What do you think of push-ups? Hell, what do you think about Rick Ross's, I think it's called Champagne Moments. That's the one where he's dissing Drake, and yeah, all kinds of like very insulting imagery. And the one thing I'll give to Rick Ross is what I believe the dynamic to have been back in the day, you know, when Drake and Ross would have first started kicking it. I'm sure that Drake kind of looked at Rick Ross as, you know, the OG basically. And I'm sure, you know, hanging around Ross, if they were in like Dade County or something, I'm sure he saw how Ross was living, the type of people he was around, the type of cars he was around and all that. And he probably thought, oh man, this is, you know, I think he was enamored by what Ross was showing him. And it sounds that way based on what Ross is saying. Like, you ain't that same white boy who, you know, was looking at us with them sticks and them Chevys. You boy, you ain't even got a Chevy. Where's your Chevy at? Bet you ain't got one, you know? So Rick Ross is kind of pulling that card, like, you know, every time we kicked it, you deferred to me as the OG, right? You were looking up to me, essentially. Even if you had your position in the industry, you had that level of respect when we were out in the streets. So you know what it is. That's kind of the energy Rick Ross is coming with. So he does have that, and he will always have that, because you can't change the past. If that's what their past hangout, kick it dynamic was, then it just is what it is, right? But yeah, let me know your thoughts on this series of diss tracks. Do you think Kendrick will deliver like many are hoping he will? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you love hip hop like I do. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.